Today I'm going to tell you about 26-year-old Dima Al-Qudsi's story from Gaza, Palestine. Her 4-month-old baby Yara was born with a serious heart defect that required immediate surgery. But when doctors told Dima the operation would cost $15,000, she faced the most heartbreaking decision any new mother could imagine. Would she sell her wedding trousseau, the precious collection every Palestinian bride treasures, to save her baby's life? What would you do if your newborn's survival depended on sacrificing the most meaningful possessions of your marriage? Imagine holding your 4-month-old baby, knowing that without surgery she might not live to see her first birthday, then realizing that the only way to pay for that surgery is to sell the wedding gifts that represent your love story and cultural heritage. I know this might tear your heart apart, but imagine if this were your own daughter facing such an impossible choice. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel so we can keep sharing these important stories from Palestine. What did Dima choose to sacrifice for her baby? And how did this decision transform not just her family, but her entire understanding of what truly matters? Stay with me until the end to find out. 26-year-old Dima Al-Qudsi had always dreamed of becoming a mother. After marrying her husband Samir 2 years earlier, she had carefully prepared for the day when they would start their family. Like every Palestinian bride, Dima's wedding trousseau was her most treasured possession, a collection of gold jewelry, embroidered dresses, silk scarves, and precious fabrics that represented not just her family's love, but centuries of Palestinian tradition. The trousseau had taken Dima's family 3 years to assemble. Her mother, Tariq, had spent countless hours embroidering traditional Palestinian dresses with intricate patterns passed down through generations. Her aunts had contributed gold bracelets and necklaces that had been crafted by the finest jewelers in Gaza. Her grandmother had given her silk scarves and fabrics that had been treasured in their family for decades. This trousseau is not just clothing and jewelry, Tariq had told Dima on her wedding day. It's our family's history, our culture, and our love for you all woven together. One day, you'll pass these treasures to your own daughter. Dima and Samir lived in a small apartment in Gaza City, where Samir worked as an accountant and Dima taught kindergarten at a local school. They had saved money carefully for their future children, dreaming of the day when their home would be filled with the laughter of little ones. When Dima discovered she was pregnant, the couple was overjoyed. They spent months preparing for their baby's arrival, setting up a nursery with care and love. Dima would often sit in the baby's room, surrounded by the beautiful items from her trousseau, imagining the day when she would dress her daughter in the traditional Palestinian clothing that connected them to their heritage. The pregnancy progressed normally, and on June 15, baby Yara was born, a beautiful, tiny girl with dark hair and delicate features. For the first few days, Dima and Samir were blissfully happy, believing they had been blessed with a perfectly healthy daughter. If this story is already touching your heart as a parent, please give it a like. Can you imagine the joy of becoming a new mother, only to discover your baby needs life-saving surgery? Let's continue with Dima's incredible test of maternal love. When Yara was 1 week old, Dr. Ahmad at Al-Shifa Hospital noticed something concerning during a routine checkup. The baby's breathing seemed labored, and she wasn't gaining weight as expected. After conducting several tests, Dr. Ahmad called Dima and Samir into his office for a conversation that would change their lives forever. Your daughter has a serious congenital heart defect, Dr. Ahmad explained gently. There are holes in the walls of her heart that are preventing proper blood flow. Without surgical intervention, this condition will become life-threatening as she grows. Dima felt the world spinning around her as she held tiny Yara, who seemed so fragile and innocent. What kind of surgery? She whispered, afraid to hear the answer. The operation is complex and requires specialized equipment and expertise, Dr. Ahmad continued. Unfortunately, this type of pediatric heart surgery cannot be performed here in Gaza. Yara would need to be treated at a specialized children's hospital in Jordan or Egypt. Samir asked the question that both parents were dreading: how much will this surgery cost? Dr. Ahmad looked uncomfortable as he delivered the devastating news. The complete treatment, including surgery, hospital stay, and follow-up care, will cost approximately $15,000. And it needs to happen within the next few months, before Yara's condition worsens. $15,000. More money than Dima and Samir could earn in 3 years. More money than they had ever seen in their lives. That night, as baby Yara slept in her crib, Dima and Samir sat at their kitchen table trying to figure out how they could possibly raise such an enormous amount of money. Their savings account contained less than $500. Their families, while loving and supportive, were all struggling financially and couldn't provide significant help. "We'll find a way," Samir said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We'll borrow money, ask for loans, find work." But Dima was already looking around their small apartment, her eyes settling on the beautiful wooden chest where she kept her wedding trousseau. Inside the chest was a collection worth exactly the amount they needed for Yara's surgery. "Samir," she said quietly, "I know how we can save our daughter." The next morning, Dima opened her trousseau chest and carefully examined each precious item. The gold jewelry alone was worth over $8,000. The embroidered dresses, some of which had taken months to create, were valued at several thousand more. The silk scarves and traditional fabrics completed a collection that represented not just monetary value, but irreplaceable cultural and family heritage. Dima picked up a gold necklace that her grandmother had worn on her own wedding day 60 years earlier. She held one of the embroidered dresses that her mother had spent 6 months creating with her own hands. She touched the silk scarves that had been passed down through 4 generations of women in her family. "These are just things," she whispered to herself, looking over at baby Yara sleeping peacefully in her crib. "My daughter's life is worth more than any possession in the world." When Samir came home from work that evening, he found Dima sitting beside Yara's crib, surrounded by all the items from her trousseau spread out on the floor. "Dima, what are you doing?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew. "I'm going to sell everything," Dima said simply. "All of it. The gold, the dresses, the scarves, everything. It's worth exactly what we need for Yara's surgery." Samir knelt down beside his wife, overwhelmed by her willingness to sacrifice everything precious to her. "Dima, these things mean everything to you. They're your connection to your family, your culture." "No, Samir," Dima replied, picking up their sleeping daughter. "This little girl is my connection to the future. These beautiful things are meaningless if we don't have Yara to share them with." The decision was made that night, though it broke both parents' hearts. The next morning, Dima began the painful process of selling her wedding trousseau, piece by precious piece. When will families have access to affordable healthcare that doesn't require mothers to sell their most precious possessions? When will children born with medical conditions receive treatment without bankrupting their families? Every baby deserves medical care that doesn't cost their parents their heritage and dreams. The first stop was Abu Khalil's jewelry shop, where Dima had often admired beautiful gold pieces before her marriage. Abu Khalil, who had known Dima's family for years, was shocked when she arrived carrying a box of gold jewelry to sell. "Sister Dima," he said sadly, "these pieces are exquisite. This necklace. I remember when your grandmother wore it. Are you certain you want to sell these family treasures?" Dima explained about baby Yara's condition and the urgent need for surgery money. Abu Khalil listened with tears in his eyes, then offered to pay the highest possible price for each piece of jewelry. "I cannot bear to see these beautiful items leave your family forever," he said. "I'll buy them at full value, but I promise to keep them safe. If you're ever able to buy them back, they'll be waiting for you." Next, Dima visited the textile market where traditional Palestinian clothing was bought and sold. The merchants who examined her embroidered dresses were amazed by the quality and artistry of the work. "These dresses are museum pieces," said Mahmoud, a respected dealer in traditional clothing. "The embroidery work is extraordinary. Your mother must be a master craftswoman." When Dima explained why she was selling her trousseau, Mahmoud insisted on paying premium prices for each dress. "These clothes will find homes with collectors who appreciate Palestinian culture," she assured Dima. "Your sacrifice is preserving our heritage, not destroying it." Over the course of 1 week, Dima sold every item in her wedding trousseau. The gold jewelry, the embroidered dresses, the silk scarves, the traditional fabrics, everything that had taken her family years to collect and create was converted into the money needed for Yara's heart surgery. The most difficult moment came when Dima sold the last item, a small embroidered baby dress that her mother had made specifically for Dima's future daughter. Tariq had spent months creating tiny, perfect stitches that told the story of their family's love. "Mama," Dima had said to her mother on the phone, "I'm so sorry. I know how much work you put into everything, how much love." "My darling daughter," Tariq had replied, "I didn't embroider those clothes for the fabric. I embroidered them for you and your children. If selling them saves my granddaughter's life, then every stitch served its purpose." 2 weeks after selling her trousseau, Dima and baby Yara traveled to a specialized children's hospital in Jordan, where Dr. Layla, a renowned pediatric heart surgeon, would perform the life-saving operation. The surgery took 6 hours, during which Dima and Samir waited in the hospital corridor, praying and hoping that their sacrifice would be rewarded with their daughter's recovery. When Dr. Layla finally emerged from the operating room with a smile on her face, Dima collapsed with relief. "The surgery was completely successful," the doctor announced. "Yara's heart defects have been repaired, and she should grow up to live a completely normal, healthy life." 3 months later, baby Yara returned to Gaza as a thriving, healthy child. The heart surgery had been successful beyond all expectations, and she was growing and developing exactly as she should. But something unexpected had happened during the months that Dima's story spread throughout their community. People had been so moved by the young mother's sacrifice that they had begun contributing to a fund to help the family recover what they had lost. Palestinian families around the world, when they heard about the mother who had sold her wedding trousseau to save her baby's heart, began sending donations specifically to help Dima rebuild her collection. Master embroiderers offered to recreate the traditional dresses. Jewelers contributed gold pieces similar to what Dima had sold. 6 months after Yara's surgery, the community presented Dima with a new trousseau, not identical to what she had sacrificed, but equally beautiful and meaningful. Each piece came with a note explaining that it was donated in honor of a mother's love and a community's admiration for her sacrifice. "This new trousseau isn't just from your family," explained Dr. Mariam, who had coordinated the community effort. "It's from every Palestinian family who believes that mothers like you represent the best of our culture, the willingness to sacrifice anything for our children." Today, 2 years later, Yara is a healthy, happy toddler who loves to play and explore. She has no memory of her early health crisis, but she will grow up knowing the story of how her mother's love saved her life. Dima has become an advocate for families dealing with children's medical emergencies, helping other parents navigate the challenges of finding treatment and funding for their children's healthcare needs. She often tells other mothers, "Our possessions are just temporary. Our children are forever." The original trousseau items that Abu Khalil had promised to keep safe were eventually donated to a Palestinian cultural museum, where they are displayed as examples of traditional craftsmanship and maternal sacrifice. Visitors to the museum learn not just about Palestinian culture, but about the modern mothers who continue to embody the values of love and sacrifice that have sustained Palestinian families for generations. Samir often tells people that watching Dima make the decision to sell her trousseau taught him a new definition of wealth. "We learned that being rich isn't about what you own," he says. "It's about having the love and courage to give up anything for the people who matter most." Yara, now a healthy 2-year-old, loves to play with the beautiful clothes in her mother's new trousseau. Dima often dresses her in small traditional Palestinian outfits, telling her stories about the women who created them and the community that came together to support their family. When will healthcare systems ensure that no mother has to choose between her cultural heritage and her child's medical needs? When will children's lives be valued above material possessions by society's support systems? Every family facing medical crises deserves community support that preserves both health and dignity. If you believe that mothers like Dima should never have to sell their most precious possessions to save their children's lives, if you believe that children's healthcare should be accessible without requiring families to sacrifice their heritage, please like this video so this story of maternal sacrifice and community response can reach people who can make a difference. Right now, thousands of people are watching this story of a mother's ultimate sacrifice and a community's beautiful response. Let's make sure Dima's message, that love means being willing to give up anything for our children, and that communities can honor such sacrifice by helping families rebuild, reaches every corner of the world. Can you imagine if you had to sell your most precious possessions to save your child's life? Can you imagine if your family's heritage had to be sacrificed for your baby's medical treatment? Think about the families in your community who might be facing similar impossible choices between treasured possessions and children's health. Every like, every comment shows that mothers like Dima and families making extraordinary sacrifices are not forgotten. If you believe that maternal love deserves community support and that children's health should never depend on their parents' ability to sell family treasures, leave a Palestinian flag emoji in the comments. Subscribe to our channel to show that you stand with mothers who sacrifice everything for their children and communities that help families rebuild after such sacrifices. Tomorrow we'll bring you another story that will remind you of the incredible power of maternal love and the way communities can transform individual sacrifice into collective healing. Don't miss it. Subscribe so we can continue sharing these important stories of parental devotion, community support, and hope from Palestine. Will you share a prayer for families like Dima's and all the mothers facing impossible choices between heritage and healthcare in the comments? They need our recognition, our support, and our commitment to ensuring that saving children's lives never requires destroying family legacies. Note, the names mentioned in this story have been changed for privacy purposes. This story is inspired by real events experienced by families facing pediatric medical emergencies and communities supporting parents who make extraordinary sacrifices in Palestine.